Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Hello and welcome, USA Global TV and Radio, to all our listeners and watchers. It is so fun to be back. Yes, I have been away for a little while and I'm back. So this is good. We have a new background, as you guys can surely see. And for those that has not missed a beat here on USA Global TV and Radio, I'm sure that you have noticed when it changed. And I am happy to be with you, bringing a bite-sized learning so that we can all be better at what we do. So for those that's not familiar with me, who am I and what am I on about? So my name is MARISKA du PREEZ, and I am a leadership development partner. I partner with leaders that goes from the specialization into leadership, as well as leaders moving up within their leadership space. And you can find me either on my website, which is journey2discover.com, or alternatively, you can contact me on my email, which is mariska@journey2discover.com. So for today, what will we be working on, you might wonder? Well, I thought coming back, we will look at leadership and influence and how to make things happen. Because, well, as leaders, we need to make things happen. But how do we actually do that? And especially when we're stepping up from a specialization into a leadership position, that might be a little bit of a tricky space to navigate because we are used to being the one that makes it so. And in this case, we need to do it through other people. And we have no idea how that might work. So whether you are a new leader or an existing one, I am sure you will find some nuggets in our time together today that might help you think about how you lead others a little bit differently. So within the leadership space, as I mentioned, it is about doing through others. So we need to make things happen through other people. And to do this, the way that we can think about doing this is utilizing things like influence. Now, when you think about influence, it is really about how we help other people to move in the direction we want to move into. We have that vision, we have that general direction where we want to go, and now we need to take everybody else along with us. So when we think about influence, what is it that we need to consider? So within the influence space itself, there is a lovely book written called Influences. And in there, they mention 3 different elements to consider when we think about influence. So first and foremost, and you might know this just from your general work experience, or if you have ever set up a goal. 1, I need to have a focus area. And 2, preferably, I need to be able to measure it. Right. So that's the very first point when it comes to influence as well. Thinking about what the focus is, around what exactly is it that I want to enable this influential piece as an influencer of my team, of my organization, of my community potentially that I work within, or even just my family. And how will I go about measuring it? Because what we measure gets done, and what we don't measure won't get done. Now, when we think about measurements, we need to make sure that it is also the things that we actually want to happen, because this goes into the second piece that we need to take into consideration, which is finding the key behaviors that would make the biggest difference when we think about moving into this specific direction that we are moving into. Now, if we didn't identify those key behaviors, it makes it a little bit more tricky, because we might be focusing on something that isn't really giving us the result that we are after. So having a bit of a look at what it is that we think might be the things that impact the space that we are moving into, and how to help others within that environment. And this might be some different types of behaviors that we need to assess and then bring out a little bit more of. Now, to give you an idea of what I'm talking about, let's take an example. So say for instance, we have our team, and we want to make sure that our team, the organization might be going through some change, and we want to make sure that the rest of the organization really understand the importance of our own team and what we are there for and how we help and serve them. So part of this then becomes our focus. So the focus is around helping others to get the best from our team. So having those types of conversations, as well as them advocating for us. So within our changing organization, they can see the value that we bring, and in all likelihood, then the potential for some cutting of numbers in our area might be reduced. So the focus would be how to help others see the value that we bring as a team. The way that we might measure this is by thinking about how we interact with our stakeholders. And when we think about interacting with our stakeholders, we need to look wider than only the people that we work with on a daily basis. So if we are, for instance, within a mechanical space and we're working on a plant, as an example, we might work with the operating staff. So the operating staff will be running the plant itself. We might also be working with some of the other technical divisions. So that's people that typically we work with fairly closely. You might even work with some of the engineering divisions, stuff like that. And we will also have our suppliers that we work with closely. So that's typical stakeholders that we have in our little ecosystem that we work with quite regularly. Now, for most of them, they would know the type of service that they get from us. Preferably, we also need to ask them what type of service they are getting from us so that we can understand what it is that they need. But that's not what this specific short lesson is about. It is about the influence piece. So thinking about our stakeholders, we might also, if we zoom out a bit more, notice that we have stakeholders within the training department, because the training department helps us to get more of our young guys that's on the plant trained up. They might also help us to understand new regulations that come into effect, or different ways of handling health and safety. So our training department would also be a stakeholder although we don't use them or work with them necessarily every day, we still work with them. Then we also have the bigger organization. So we have leadership, not only our direct leadership, but even the ones above that, as well as the leadership within the other departments. So all of those are still our stakeholders. We also have in our stakeholder group, even though we are an internally servicing department, the external stakeholders. So we have the people that we are delivering a service to. So say, for instance, we have a water treatment plant, or we have a power plant type of thing. The people that we provide the service to, so the people that would use the water or that would utilize the electricity that we generate, those are also stakeholders. Now, as we go out in looking at the stakeholders, it might become a little bit more tricky because we don't necessarily have direct interaction with some of them. And it is always good to keep them in mind in whatever it is that we are doing, because we might impact those stakeholders in a way that might be positive or negative. And especially when it is a more negative type of interaction that they might experience, that would also influence our influencing. So we want to make sure that we understand the focus that we have. So in this specific case, the focus is more internal, and it is around the change for the organization. We also have the change itself. So thinking about what exactly is intended with the change. What is it that the organization is trying to achieve with the change? And how do we as a smaller group or team fit into this potential change? How might that look like? So that might be our focus with related measurements. So depending on what type of change it is or what type of things it is that we need to impact, we will then get measurements accordingly. Now, the behaviors, we said that we wanted to make sure that everybody else in our stakeholder group understand what value we are bringing. So key behaviors within that, being within the mechanical space or just within the engineering space in general, most engineers are not fans of, well, talking to anybody else that's not an engineer. Thinking about our training department, for instance, right? How do we now communicate with our training department to show them the value that we can bring to them, not only they to us? So understanding what that is, and the key behavior becomes around communication. So being able to communicate our value effectively to others in a way where it is of value to them. So understanding what they value and then communicating how we help out within that space. So that would be part of the behavior that we want to basically focus on to show everyone else what it is that we are doing. So the last element around this, and it breaks it down a little bit more so that we know what the other engagement areas is when we think about influence, is engaging the 6 sources of influence. Now, in said book, there is 6 sources identified for when we think about influencing. So say, for instance, we think about that training department, right? As an example, we need to think about them, the human beings in the training department, personally first. So what's the personal motivations for that department and in relation to us? So when we think about the interactions that we have, what would the motivations be? What do they enjoy? So what is it? So do they enjoy whatever the thing is that we are trying to influence within that space? And looking at that from different points of view, right? So not only from the individual, but also from the team's perspective. Then we also look at ability. So when we think about our own team, we want to make sure that the behavior that we are focusing on is communication. Now, typically, do engineers enjoy communication? Well, to a degree. It depends on who they communicate with, right? So how can we help them to enjoy the type of communication that we want them to have with the training department? Then our next question would be the ability. Do they have the ability to communicate? Well, most of them do have the ability to communicate. Some of them communicate very technically. Some of them might communicate very succinctly. And some of them might not communicate very good at all. But there is some ability in the communication. So understanding to what degree that is, and then being able to help them within that space. Then next on our list is social. So when we think about social, we think first of the motivations. Now, motivations within our social space is anything where you look at norms. Norms typically is not necessarily only things where we have a rule for it. It is also the things where we've accepted certain behaviors. And because we have accepted these specific behaviors, it's become a norm. So to take our little team, one of the norms within our team might be that they do not communicate outside of the team. They leave it to the team leader. Now, yes, the team leader can communicate with the stakeholders, and if that's the only person that's going to communicate with the stakeholders, it might not be as effective. So we want the rest of the team to also cultivate this specific behavior. And currently, the norm in our team is that they don't. So the question then becomes there, do others encourage them to enact wrong behaviors? So in this case, our leader just takes it on themselves and they continue to communicate with the external stakeholders instead of empowering the team members to do that on their own. So being able to help them and empower them will change the behavior as well as the norms that's been set. Which brings us to the next point around ability. Do others enable them? So if we think about our team, it's my leader enabling the team members to do the thing that they want to have done. So are they enabling that type of behavior? Now, normally when we step into leadership, as I said at the beginning, we have a tendency to do it ourselves, which is a little bit problematic because we cannot do everything ourselves. And I'm not only talking about the work, I'm also talking about the wider context of things and being able to pull them in for decision making, to help with communication, and in this specific case, to influence the other spaces that we interact in. So being able to enable them is really that element around the empowerment. So we want to empower them to be able to start to do this behavior, which is communicating effectively with our stakeholders. Then we also have the structural piece to think about. So structural motivation, we think about what rewards or possible sanctions they have that encourage them to do that. So is this part of a KPI that they have and it has some financial benefits? Is this part of a different type of reward system? So we might set up something within our team where we have a celebrations meeting. And in our celebrations meeting, we might have best person communicating for the week type of celebration. So it doesn't have any financial rewards attached to it, but it has a little bit of a bragging rights attached to it. And that would also encourage people. So thinking about the structure, and we are really good at thinking about structural motivations. Typically, within the workplace, they are normally financially driven, but they don't need to be. So thinking about what would help to encourage them to bring out this key behavior that we are trying to get more of. And then we have the ability. Do the environment itself enable them to do this thing? Now, if in our environment we have a very, very strict way of communicating, and we can only communicate through certain channels, no others, it makes it really difficult then for our team to communicate, which they then won't, because the physical structure that we are sitting with is not enabling them to do that. So thinking through these different elements will help us to identify where it is that we need to put our focus in order to enable us to get that influence through. So as a quick recap, the things that we need to take into consideration when we want to influence within our space is making sure that we are focused on the thing that we want to influence or change, and we have a measure for it. So have some way that we can measure it. In the case of our team, we have the communication piece where we want to speak to other stakeholders so they can see the value that we bring, and we can also understand what it is that they need. And in that case, the measure can be a variety of things relating to getting more data from our stakeholders, as well as the amounts of times where we were able to openly share how we could better work together. Then we have our key behaviors that we're looking for. And in this specific case, we identified that communication would be it for the team, so that not only the leader does the communication, but the whole team communicates and helps to influence stakeholders. And then, of course, we have those key sources for influence to ensure that we can bring all of these different things. Now, the more of them we can have work for us, the better. If we can do 5, 6, wonderful. 5, also great. Taking into consideration all the different elements within them to see where we might have some places where we might have problems. Because the more of them we can actually get to put in place, the better and the more likely it is that the influence that we are trying to have will work. And I know this might feel like a daunting task. Plus, I know that you can break it down into smaller pieces. And if you're not too sure what to do, or you're not too sure where to start with your team, please do get into contact with me so that we can work together and see how to develop your capacity to help you to develop your team's capacity. And as I said, with that, that is our short little learning for today. And I look forward to seeing you in the not too distant future. And again, to get hold of me, you can do that via my email address, which is mariska@journey2discover.com. Or alternatively, you can also find me on LinkedIn. Connect and we can start our conversation and get you to the road of becoming an epic influencer and leader. Until next time, bye-bye.
We face daily cyber risks, spending over 7 hours of screen time, including 4.5 hours on mobile phones. This convenience comes with significant dangers, with cybercrime costs predicted to exceed $10.5 trillion by 2025. In 2023 alone, seniors lost over $3.4 billion to cybercrime. Our goal is to make social engineering concepts of cybersecurity easier to understand. We work with business teams, senior living facilities, investment companies, and educational institutions, both individually and in groups. We offer real-life examples to help you recognize and prevent attacks, with sessions available both in person, in selected regions, and remotely. Schedule your training session, or to learn more, contact us today. Call us at 847-845-9360. Email us at info@cybersecurityeasy.com. Protect your team and family with cybersecurityeasy.com.
My name is Dr. Felix Kravitz, and I am the founder of cybersecurityeasy.com, LLC. We live in a world full of vulnerabilities and cyber risks. We spend almost 4.5 hours a day on our mobile phones. It's over 7 hours of screen time daily when including computer use. We often forget that this convenience comes with risks. Published data predicts that the cost of cybercrime will exceed $10.5 trillion in 2025. These numbers encompass not only businesses, but also each one of us, including our children and our parents. In 2023, the FBI reported over $3.4 billion lost by seniors aged 60 and older. Cybersecurityeasy.com LLC's initiative is to massively support the community by providing cyber safety coaching and improving social engineering awareness. Our goal is to make social engineering concepts of cybersecurity easier to understand. We work with business teams, seniors, and educational institutions, both individually and in groups. We cover various topics from phone phishing attacks to AI-generated voice cloning, robocalls, password protection, and more using life examples. Talk to us today. Call us at 847-845-9360 or email us at info@cybersecurityeasy.com.
5 Little Known Secrets for Dementia Caregivers with Tracy Cram-Perkins.
Hi there, I am Tracy Cram-Perkins, the host of the Dementia Home Care Show here on USA Global TV and Radio. I am also the author of the book of the same name. And you'll see this QR code. This is for an extended version of the same talk. So if you want to see the full hour-long version, feel free to scan the code and go to that website. Stick with me. We'll talk about 5 little known secrets to make it a little easier to do dementia caregiving. What you're seeing on the left-hand side is a healthy aged brain, age 55 and above. The one you're seeing on the right is an Alzheimer's disease brain. It is a moderate disease. It is shrinking. It has holes in it. The memories that were in those holes no longer exist. When you're learning something, let's say in kindergarten, you learn how to tie your shoelace. Well, then by the time you're in 2nd grade, your brain remembers that information from tying the shoelace and applies it so you can learn more quickly how to tie more complex knots. So the brain is hardwired to do this for us. So it helps us learn faster so it doesn't take us long to acquire knowledge. The brain is looking for the information and they pick the closest to wherever that hole is. Let's look at some tips that we can use to help do that.
These are 5 simple tools you can use as a dementia caregiver to help your loved one. The whiteboard is a useful tool in recording the day's activities and the answers to repetitive questions. The calendar clock is a very useful tool to orient your loved one on the day, the date, and the time, and remind them of upcoming appointments. The communication cards are a great tool to bridge the gap when they can no longer tell you what's wrong. And then there's the pill minder for when your loved one is still able to take pills but needs prompting. The final tool I want to share with you is the memory book. It tells your loved one's story. It's a great tool for distraction, redirection, also as a conversation starter, and telling you where they are in their story so you know how to answer their questions.
Music is probably the most powerful tool in your toolbox after laughter. Music is a way to maintain connection. It sticks with your brain longer than any other thing, including reading. When you're having an issue with somebody, you can play their favorite music if you move them to another room, something that makes them happy, or you can start singing songs together from their childhood. These are some of my favorite books for caregivers. My show airs on the third Tuesday of every month, and you can view past episodes on YouTube. Thank you, everyone.
This program has been brought to you in part by Tracy Cram Perkins. Connect with her and order her book at tracycramperkins.com. For more information about Alzheimer's disease, support resources, and how you can help, contact the Alzheimer's Association at 1-800-272-3900 or visit their website at www.alz.org. They offer 24/7 helpline support and a wealth of information to assist you and your loved ones.